The swollen river raged with spring snowmelt as Eliza Norwood clutched her 6-month-old daughter to her chest, the violent current pulling them farther from shore with each passing second. The year was 1875, and the unforgiving wilderness of Wyoming territory showed no mercy to a widowed mother desperate to cross the flooded tributary of the North Platte. Her terrified scream pierced the air as the makeshift raft she'd fashioned from fallen timber splintered beneath her weight, plunging both mother and child into the frigid waters. "Hold on." The deep voice carried over the rushing water as Eliza surfaced, gasping and struggling to keep her baby's face above water. Through water-blurred vision, she spotted a man on horseback galloping alongside the riverbank, tracking their progress downstream. "I'm coming for you." The stranger dismounted in one fluid motion, tearing off his duster coat and boots. His hat went flying as he dove headfirst into the churning waters. "Hold on, I'm not letting you go alone." He shouted, powerful strokes bringing him closer as Eliza felt her strength waning, her baby's cries growing weaker. "Please," she whispered through chattering teeth, "save my daughter." The man reached them just as Eliza's head dipped beneath the surface. Strong arms encircled both mother and child, pulling them toward an outcropping of rocks. "Got you," he grunted, fighting the current. "Just hold tight to your little one." Eliza clung to consciousness and her baby as the stranger navigated the treacherous waters, angling them toward a low-hanging branch. With one powerful lunge, he caught hold of it, anchoring them against the pull of the river. "Can you hold on?" he asked, his face inches from hers. Blue eyes locked with her brown ones, and despite the dire circumstances, Eliza noticed the kindness in them. "Yes," she managed, readjusting her grip on her daughter, who had fallen eerily silent. The man Eliza now saw he was dressed like a cowboy maneuvered them along the branch to shore, half dragging, half carrying them onto the muddy bank. They collapsed in a heap, all three soaking and gasping. "My baby," Eliza cried, looking down at her daughter's pale face. "Emma's not breathing." The cowboy gently took the infant, laying her on his knee face down. With careful precision, he pressed between her shoulder blades, then turned her over and pressed his fingers to her tiny chest. "Come on, little one," he whispered, repeating the motion several times before Emma suddenly convulsed, coughing up water. Her eyes fluttered open, and she began to wail the most beautiful sound Eliza had ever heard. "Thank God," Eliza sobbed, gathering Emma to her chest. She looked up at her rescuer through tear-filled eyes. "You saved us, both of us. I don't know how to name's Andrew Thornton," he interrupted with a gentle smile, water dripping from his dark blonde hair. "And we're not safe yet, madam. Night's coming and we need to get you both warm." Eliza nodded, shivering violently as the adrenaline began to fade. "Eliza Norwood, and this is Emma." Andrew whistled, and to Eliza's surprise, his horse appeared from upriver, trotting toward them. "Smart girl," he murmured, patting the mare's neck. "My camp's not far, can you ride?" Within minutes, Andrew had helped Eliza onto his horse, handed Emma up to her, and was leading them toward a small cluster of trees where a modest camp was set up. Eliza swayed in the saddle, exhaustion threatening to overcome her. "Stay with me, Mrs. Norwood," Andrew called up to her. "Just a bit farther, miss," Eliza corrected automatically. "My husband, he's been gone a year now." Andrew's expression softened, but he said nothing, just nodded and continued leading them to safety. The camp was simple but well-established, a small tent, a ring of stones surrounding a fire pit, and supplies neatly organized under a canvas tarp. Andrew worked quickly, building a fire and retrieving dry blankets from his saddlebags. "You need to get out of those wet clothes," he said matter-of-factly, handing Eliza a blanket and his spare shirt. "I'll turn my back. Emma too, she'll catch her death." Eliza hesitated only a moment before the practicality of the situation overcame her modesty. She stripped off her soaked dress and petticoats, dried herself as best she could, and pulled Andrew's oversized shirt over her head. It smelled of leather and pine. Emma fussed as Eliza removed her wet gown, but soon settled once wrapped in a dry blanket. "Decent?" Eliza called, and Andrew turned back, pointedly keeping his eyes on her face. "You need to eat something warm," he said, already setting a pot of beans over the fire. "Then you can tell me what in tarnation you were doing trying to cross that river alone with a baby." As they huddled near the fire, Andrew's spare trousers rolled up several times at the ankles, Eliza shared her story. After her husband James died of pneumonia last spring, she'd stayed on at their small homestead near Laramie. But the drought had killed their crops and the bank was foreclosing. She'd heard of work in the settlement across the river, a general store owner looking for help. "The ferryman wanted more money than I had," she explained, her voice hollow. "I thought the river looked low enough upriver to cross on my own." She looked down at Emma, now sleeping peacefully. "I nearly killed us both. You were desperate," Andrew said quietly. "Desperate folks make desperate choices." He stirred the beans. "Where's your family back east?" "My parents disowned me when I married James and came west." Eliza blinked back tears. "They said I was throwing my life away on a foolish dream." Andrew nodded, his face thoughtful in the firelight. And now I have nothing but Emma. The clothes on my back, well, your clothes now and whatever was in my bag, which is likely at the bottom of the river." Andrew added more wood to the fire. "I've got some jerky in my pack if you're hungry now. Beans'll take a while yet." They ate in comfortable silence as darkness fell completely. Emma woke once to nurse, and Andrew respectfully busied himself tending to his horse while Eliza fed her daughter. When he returned, he carried a small leather-bound journal. "Found this in your pocket while I was hanging your dress to dry," he said, handing it to her. "Figured it might be important." Eliza gasped, taking the soggy book with trembling hands. "My journal, thank you." She clutched it to her chest. "It has all my memories of James, little notes for Emma when she's older." Andrew nodded, understanding in his eyes. "Get some rest, Miss Norwood. You and Emma take the tent. I'll keep watch by the fire." "I can't put you out of you're not," he interrupted gently. "Been sleeping under the stars most of my life. One more night won't hurt me none." As Eliza settled into the tent with Emma beside her, she found herself wondering about the quiet cowboy who'd risked his life for two strangers. His blue eyes haunted her as she drifted into an exhausted sleep. Morning brought bright sunshine and the smell of coffee. Eliza emerged from the tent, Emma on her hip, to find Andrew cooking biscuits in a small cast-iron pan. "Good morning," he said, tipping an imaginary hat. "Your clothes are still damp, but another hour in the sun should do it." "Thank you," Eliza said, accepting a tin cup of coffee. "For everything?" "Just happened to be in the right place," Andrew replied with a shrug. "What were you doing out here anyway?" Eliza asked, realizing she hadn't questioned it before. A shadow passed over Andrew's face. "Heading north. Got a job offer at a ranch near the Montana border." "Oh." Eliza felt a strange disappointment. "Well, if you could just point me toward the nearest town, we'll be on our way after breakfast." Andrew frowned. "You still planning to cross that river?" "I need work, Mr. Thornton, and there's nothing left for us back there." He sipped his coffee, studying her over the rim of his cup. "The river won't be crossable for weeks after yesterday's rain." "And even if it were, I wouldn't let you try it again." "You wouldn't let me?" Eliza bristled, her pride flaring. Andrew held up a hand. "Poor choice of words, but there's a town about 15 miles north of here, River Spend, small place but growing, might be work there." "Is that where you're headed?" "It's on my way." He hesitated. "I could take you there, make sure you and Emma get there safely." Relief washed over Eliza, though she tried not to show it. "We'd be most grateful, Mr. Thornton." "Andrew," he corrected with a small smile. "After fishing you out of a river, I reckon we can use first names." They set out after breakfast, Eliza riding Andrew's mare with Emma secured to her chest in a sling fashioned from a spare blanket. Andrew walked alongside, leading the horse by the reins. Her clothes, now dry, felt rough against her skin, but Eliza was grateful to be properly dressed again. "Tell me about this ranch job," she said after they'd traveled in companionable silence for an hour. Not much to tell. Friend of my late father owns it, needs a foreman. Andrew kicked at a stone in the path. Been working odd jobs since the war. Time to settle somewhere, I guess. You fought in the war. Eliza studied him with new interest. Andrew nodded, his expression clouding. Cavalry, last 2 years. Came back to find my folks had died of fever. Farm was sold for taxes. I'm sorry, Eliza said softly. James wanted to fight, but his lungs were never strong enough. They stopped by a creek around midday to rest and water the horse. Emma was fussing, and Eliza nursed her while Andrew tactfully explored the surrounding area, returning with a handful of wild berries. Sweet, he said, offering them to Eliza. Not many, but they'll help the journey pass. The simple kindness brought unexpected tears to Eliza's eyes. How long had it been since someone had shown her consideration? Since James died, she'd been too busy surviving to notice the loneliness. Thank you, she whispered, accepting the berries. Their fingers brushed, and Eliza felt a warmth that had nothing to do with the spring sunshine. They reached Riverspend just before dusk, a collection of wooden buildings scattered along a dusty main street. A church steeple dominated one end of town, while a saloon anchored the other. Between them stood a general store, livery, small hotel, and various other establishments. Not much, Andrew said apologetically as they paused on the outskirts, but it's a sight better than sleeping rough another night. Eliza adjusted Emma in her arms. It looks perfect. The hotel owner, Mrs. Peterson, was a widow herself and took an immediate liking to Eliza and Emma. When Andrew explained their situation, omitting the near drowning but emphasizing Eliza's need for work, Mrs. Peterson's face brightened. Well now, isn't that Providence? My girl just left to get married in Cheyenne, and I need help with the rooms and cooking. Can you cook, dear? Yes, madam, Eliza said, hope rising in her chest, and keep accounts. Educated, are you? Mrs. Peterson looked impressed. Even better. Room and board for you and the little one plus $2 a week. How's that sound? It was less than Eliza had hoped for, but it came with a roof over their heads. That sounds wonderful, Mrs. Peterson. Thank you. Andrew settled his bill for one night, despite Mrs. Peterson's insistence that the man who'd brought her new help deserved a discount. As they stood awkwardly in the small lobby, Eliza realized their time together was ending. I can't thank you enough, she began, bouncing Emma gently as the baby began to fuss. Andrew shifted uncomfortably, hat in his hands. No need for thanks, anyone would have done the same. No, Eliza said firmly, not anyone, most would have ridden past, assuming we were beyond help. You risked your life. A flush crept up Andrew's neck. Well, I'm glad I was there. He settled his hat back on his head. I'll be moving on at first light, that ranch won't wait forever. Eliza felt a pang of disappointment but nodded. Of course. I wish you all the best, Andrew. And you, Eliza? He touched the brim of his hat in salute, then gently ran a finger down Emma's cheek. You too, little one. Stay out of rivers from now on, you hear. With that, he turned and climbed the stairs to his room, leaving Eliza with the strange feeling that she was losing something precious before it had even begun. Morning came too quickly. Eliza, already adapting to her new role, was helping Mrs. Peterson prepare breakfast for the hotel's 5 guests when the front door opened. Looking up, she expected to see Andrew on his way out. Instead, a tall man with a silver star pinned to his vest entered. Sheriff Wilson, Mrs. Peterson greeted him. Coffee, please, Martha. The sheriff nodded at Eliza. New help. This is Miss Norwood and her daughter Emma, just arrived yesterday. Eliza, this is Sheriff Thomas Wilson. Eliza wiped her hands on her apron and nodded respectfully. Good morning, Sheriff, madam. The sheriff accepted a cup of coffee from Mrs. Peterson. Came to warn you, Martha. Got word the Blackwell gang might be headed this way. 3 men robbed a bank in Laramie, killed 2 people. They were spotted 20 miles south yesterday. Eliza's blood ran cold. The Blackwell gang had terrorized the territory for months. James had spoken of them before he died, warning Eliza to be careful when she went to town alone. Lord have mercy, Mrs. Peterson murmured. Should we be worried? Just keeping folks informed, the sheriff said, gulping his coffee. Might not come this way at all. But keep your doors locked at night and report any strangers acting suspicious. The door from the stairs opened and Andrew appeared, saddlebags over his shoulder. He nodded at the group. Morning. The sheriff's hand instinctively moved to his gun. And who might you be, mister? Andrew Thornton, he replied evenly. Just passing through. Brought Miss Norwood to town yesterday. Eliza stepped forward. Mr. Thornton saved my daughter and me from drowning in the river, Sheriff. He's been nothing but a gentleman. Sheriff Wilson relaxed slightly but still eyed Andrew with suspicion. Where you headed, Mr. Thornton? North. Got a job waiting at the Diamond Tea Ranch near the Montana border. Jeb Thompson's place? When Andrew nodded, the sheriff seemed to relax further. Known Jeb for years. Good man. Yes, sir. Andrew set his saddlebags by the door. Any chance of breakfast before I head out, Mrs. Peterson? The morning passed too quickly. Andrew ate while Sheriff Wilson filled him in on the Blackwell gang, suggesting safer routes north that might help him avoid trouble. Eliza moved between the kitchen and dining room, acutely aware that each passing minute brought Andrew's departure closer. I'll check on your horse, Sheriff Wilson said eventually, excusing himself. Mrs. Peterson had already disappeared to help another guest, leaving Andrew and Eliza alone in the dining room. Well, Andrew said, rising from the table, I should get going. Eliza nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. Emma gurgled from her makeshift cradle, a drawer padded with blankets that Mrs. Peterson had found in the storeroom. She looks happy, Andrew commented, peering down at the baby. You both do. This is a good place for you. Yes, Eliza managed. Mrs. Peterson is very kind. Andrew reached into his pocket and pulled out a small cloth bag. Almost forgot. Found these when I went back for my horse yesterday. He handed her the bag. Thought you might want them. Inside, Eliza found her wedding ring and a small silver locket, both of which had been in her dress pocket when the river took her. The locket contained a tiny portrait of James and a lock of his hair. They were the only valuables she had left in the world. How did you? She began, tears welling in her eyes. River washed them up on a sandbar, Andrew explained. Just got lucky. Eliza clutched the treasures to her chest. Thank you, I don't know what to say. Don't need to say anything. His eyes were gentle. I should. The sound of gunshots from the street interrupted him. Andrew moved to the window in 2 long strides, peering out cautiously. 3 riders, he reported, his voice tight. Looks like they're shooting up the town. He turned to Eliza, his expression grave. Could be the Blackwell gang. More shots rang out, followed by shouting. A woman screamed somewhere down the street. Get Emma and find somewhere to hide, Andrew instructed, checking the revolver at his hip. Upstairs, maybe a closet or under a bed. What are you going to do? Eliza asked, already scooping Emma from her cradle. Help the sheriff if I can, Andrew replied grimly. There's only one of him and sounds like 3 of them. Before Eliza could protest, Andrew moved to the door. He paused, looking back at her with an intensity that made her breath catch. Be careful, she whispered. He nodded once, then slipped outside. Eliza carried Emma upstairs, heart pounding. From the window at the end of the hall, she could see 3 men on horseback in the middle of the street. One was firing into the air while another held a gun on Sheriff Wilson, who stood with his hands raised, his own weapon lying in the dust. The third man had dismounted and was entering the general store across the street. Even from a distance, Eliza recognized the notorious Blackwell brothers from the wanted posters. The oldest, Samuel, was easily identifiable by his black duster and the scar that ran from his eye to his chin. Movement caught her attention. Andrew was moving along the edge of the buildings, staying in the shadows. He had his gun drawn and was working his way closer to where Sheriff Wilson stood. Please be careful, Eliza whispered, clutching Emma tighter. Emma began to fuss, and Eliza ducked away from the window, moving to the supply closet at the end of the hall. She slipped inside, pulling the door nearly closed but leaving it open a crack so she could hear more gunshots. A man yelled in pain. Emma whimpered, and Eliza gently covered her daughter's mouth, praying the baby wouldn't cry out. Minutes stretched like hours. The sounds of fighting continued: shouts, a crash, more gunfire. Eliza longed to look out the window again, but feared being spotted. Instead, she pressed her ear to the door crack, straining to make sense of the chaos. Suddenly, the hotel's front door banged open. Heavy footsteps thundered up the stairs. "Check the rooms," a gruff voice commanded. "Find anything worth taking." Eliza's blood turned to ice. She pressed herself against the back wall of the closet, one hand still covering Emma's mouth, the other reaching for anything that might serve as a weapon. Her fingers closed around a broom handle. A floorboard creaked just outside the closet. The door handle turned slowly. Eliza raised the broom, prepared to fight for her daughter's life. The door swung open. "Eliza, Andrew," she nearly collapsed with relief. He was bleeding from a cut above his eye, and his shirt was torn at the shoulder, but he was alive. "Are you both all right?" Eliza nodded, unable to speak. "We need to go," Andrew said urgently. "Samuel Blackwell is dead, but his brothers escaped. They're wounded and angry, and they know there are people in the hotel." "What about Sheriff Wilson?" Andrew's expression darkened. "He's hurt bad. Doc's with him now." He held out his hand. "Come on, we need to get somewhere safer until this is over." They moved cautiously down the back stairs, Emma mercifully quiet in Eliza's arms. The kitchen was empty, Mrs. Peterson presumably hiding elsewhere. Andrew led them out the back door and across to the livery stable. "My horse is saddled," he explained, helping Eliza mount while still holding Emma. "We'll head out of town, circle back when it's safe. But your job can wait," Andrew finished firmly, swinging up behind her, his chest pressed against her back, his arms reaching around her to take the reins. "Hold tight to Emma." They rode hard out of town, taking a game trail into the surrounding hills. Only when they were well hidden among the trees did Andrew finally slow the horse to a walk. "There's a line shack about 2 miles from here," he said, his breath warm against Eliza's ear. "Used it once when I passed through last fall. Should be safe enough for now." The shack was little more than 4 walls and a roof, with a small stone fireplace and a single room. It was dusty but intact, with a narrow cot against one wall and a rough-hewn table with 2 chairs. "Not much," Andrew apologized, helping Eliza down from the horse. "But it'll do until morning. I'll check on things in town then." "You were supposed to be miles away by now," Eliza said softly as Andrew built a small fire in the fireplace. "Heading to your new job." Andrew shrugged, not meeting her eyes. "Didn't feel right, leaving with trouble coming. You could have been killed. So could you?" He finally looked up, his blue eyes intense. "I couldn't let that happen." They sat in silence as the small fire took hold, Emma sleeping peacefully on the cot. Eliza watched Andrew tend his wounds, using water from his canteen to clean the cut above his eye. "Here, let me," she offered, taking the cloth from his hand. She gently dabbed at the cut, aware of his eyes on her face. "Thank you again for saving us, again." Andrew's hand came up to catch hers, stilling her movements. "You don't have to keep thanking me, Eliza." "Then what should I do?" she whispered, suddenly very aware of how close they were sitting, how his hand felt wrapped around hers. "Tell me to stay," he said so quietly she almost didn't hear him. "Ask me not to go north tomorrow." Eliza's breath caught. "What about your job, the ranch? It'll wait, or there'll be other jobs." His gaze was steady. "But there's only one you." "You barely know me," Eliza protested weakly, even as her heart raced. "I know enough," Andrew replied. "I know you're brave enough to strike out on your own with a baby. I know you're strong enough to survive losing everything and still care for your daughter. I know I haven't been able to stop thinking about you since I pulled you from that river." He paused. "And I know that riding away from you yesterday was the hardest thing I've done in a long time." Eliza stared at him, searching his face for any sign of insincerity. She found none. "I don't want to be a burden." "You're not," he said firmly. "You're the reason I turned back. I got halfway out of town and couldn't make myself keep going." His thumb traced circles on her palm. "I told myself I was just checking to make sure you were settled." But the truth is, I wasn't ready to say goodbye. I wasn't ready either, Eliza admitted, her voice trembling. But I have nothing to offer you, Andrew. No money, no property, just myself and a baby who isn't yours. That's all I'm asking for, he said simply. A chance. To see if what I'm feeling might grow into something real, something lasting. Emma stirred on the cot, whimpering softly. Eliza reluctantly pulled her hand from Andrew's to tend to her daughter. As she settled back beside him, Emma nursing contentedly, Eliza found the courage to say what was in her heart. I felt something too, she confessed. When you pulled us from the river, when you shared your berries, when you came back for us today. She met his gaze. I thought I'd never feel this way again after James died. And now I'm wondering if sometimes life gives us second chances when we least expect them. Andrew's smile was slow and warm. Is that a yes, you'll let me stay? For how long? Eliza asked, needing to be sure. As long as you'll have me, he answered. A week, a month. Forever maybe if we both decide that's what we want. Eliza looked down at Emma, then back at Andrew. What about your life, your plans? My plans were to find someplace that felt like home again, Andrew said honestly. I lost that when my parents died, been wandering ever since. He reached out to stroke Emma's soft hair. But these past 2 days with you and Emma, for the first time in years I've felt like maybe home isn't a place, maybe it's people. Tears pricked Eliza's eyes. I'd like you to stay, she whispered, at least for a while, to see what might happen between us. Andrew's smile widened. Gently, giving her plenty of time to pull away, he leaned forward and pressed his lips to hers in a soft, brief kiss. Then I'll stay. They returned to Riverspend the next morning to find the danger had passed. The surviving Blackwell brothers had fled, and Sheriff Wilson, while injured, would recover. Mrs. Peterson welcomed them back with open arms, especially when Andrew offered to help repair the damage to the hotel. Over the coming weeks, Andrew made himself indispensable around town. He fixed the hotel's leaky roof, helped the blacksmith with a large order, and even assisted the sheriff while the lawman recovered from his injuries. Eliza continued working for Mrs. Peterson, but now with Andrew occupying the room next to hers, their evenings spent together on the hotel's small back porch after Emma was asleep. It was on that porch, a month after the river rescue, that Andrew first told Eliza he loved her. Under a blanket of stars, he spoke of dreams he'd thought long dead, a home, a family, a purpose. He spoke of how she'd awakened those dreams again, given him hope for a future he'd stopped believing in. I don't want to replace James, he said carefully, holding her hand in the darkness. I know he'll always have a place in your heart in Emma's history, but I want to build something new with you, something that honors what you had but creates space for what we could have. Eliza, tears streaming down her face, told him she loved him too, had loved him since that day by the creek when he'd brought her wild berries simply to make her smile. They were married in Riverspend's small church 3 months later, Emma giggling in Mrs. Peterson's lap as they spoke their vows. Sheriff Wilson stood as Andrew's best man, fully recovered and grateful to the man who'd saved his life during the Blackwell gang attack. Their wedding gift from the town was the deed to a small plot of land just outside Riverspend, 2 acres with a modest cabin that needed work but had good bones, as Andrew put it. Together, they made it a home, adding a room for Emma and a front porch where they could watch the sunset. Andrew never did take that job in Montana. Instead, he became Riverspend's deputy sheriff, learning the law from Wilson while helping keep the growing town safe. Eliza continued working at the hotel until their first son was born a year after their wedding, a strong boy they named James Andrew, honoring both the past and the present. On summer evenings, they would often picnic by the small stream that ran through their property. Andrew would tell Emma stories of her birth father's bravery, ensuring the little girl would know the man who had first loved her. And sometimes, when the water ran high after spring rains, Eliza would look at the stream and remember the day a river nearly took everything from her, only to give her an unexpected second chance at love instead. You ever regret it?" She asked Andrew one evening, 5 years after he'd pulled her from the water. They sat on their porch, watching Emma play with her 2 younger brothers in the yard. Diving into that river? Staying in Riverspend instead of taking that ranch job? Andrew pulled her closer, pressing a kiss to her temple. "Not for a single moment," he answered. "Some risks are worth taking, and some detours lead exactly where you're meant to go all along." As the sun set over their small piece of Wyoming, casting long shadows across the land they'd built together, Eliza knew with absolute certainty that the river that had nearly claimed her life had instead delivered her greatest blessing, a love brave enough to dive in when all hope seemed lost, strong enough to hold on through the darkest currents, and true enough to last a lifetime.